Belgium. This is the first fish of the session, a nice 38 pounder. Well, let's slip that back and see what else is gonna come up.
Well, my first fish of the trip on the first morning, and it's an absolute cracker. According to Geert, this is one of the stockies because he's just had one of what looks like one of the originals. But I'm well happy with that because it's an absolute corker. And it's going to be a huge fish for the future, I'm sure. So I'm going to slip her back. There's a few fish showing out there, and hopefully I'll latch into one of the big ones as well. Absolutely beautiful. Well, we're nearing about 9 o'clock now in the morning. This is our first morning at what I can only describe as paradise, really. We're at a beautiful Belgian lake. It's got to be 60 odd acres in size. And I'm here with my friend Geert Ooms. It's the first time I fished with Geert actually, so it's going to be an education, I'm sure. He's a very good angler here in Belgium and really well respected. But yeah, it's 9 o'clock. We've both caught one on the first morning, which we're very pleased about. We got here around 7 o'clock in the evening last night. Got the rods out pretty sharpish. Again, I'm pretty lucky that Geert knows the lake well, so he's put us in an area where he was pretty sure the fish would be. There's been a bit of bait going in here as well, so we've been lucky in that way. We've got a far bank that's kind of out of bounds really, so it's well out of casting range. We're using a boat today. There's not much weed in here or anything like that, so it's quite straightforward fishing. We placed all 6 rods on the far bank last night. Actually, I say that 5 rods. Geert's got one in the margins to the left. Fished over boilies, a mixture of particles. I had a take early morning, must have been around 4 AM, that turned out to be a beautiful one of the stockies, real scaly fish, and definitely a whacker of the future. And Geert had a 38 pounder, which was a colossal old warrior and something that I'm really hoping I can latch into, something like that. So it's looking good. It's really hot actually today, so I think it's going to go up to sort of 27, 28 degrees. It looks good now. It's still relatively cool, but I think it's going to be pretty hot later on. So it's looking like mostly like nighttime or early morning action. But while it's quiet, we'll sit here and get a nice suntan anyway, and enjoy these beautiful surroundings. Well, it's about mid-morning now and things have gone pretty quiet on that lake, so Geert and I have just been for a little wander. He knows a few spots just up the top. We've been over there, had a look, and there's a few fish in there milling around. They look like a couple of big ones too, so crumbed up a bit of tuna, introduced that into the area, and I've gone back to get a rod. I've left Geert to man the other rods, but I'm on my way to have a little stalk up, so let's go and have a little look and see if we can winkle one out the edge. Well, I'm whispering because I've got fish just in front of me about 3-4 foot from the bank. They're not feeding heavily, but they're coming in, just having a little look and slowly swimming away. Hence why I've gone for not particularly conventional margin tactics, but I've gone for a white one, hoping that the fish are going to come in, see the white one and go straight to that. So almost like single hook bait fishing out in open water, but within a few feet of the bank. So I'm going to lower it in and fingers crossed, you never know. Well, we're getting into afternoon time now, and it's been, I would say, an eventful day. I've done a lot of stalking, tried catching them off the top, but these Belgian carp aren't so easy. They were coming up to the pop-up, practically sniffing it and then turning away, and it was tricky. I managed to pull out a one as well, and it was pretty frustrating afternoon, but I've come back to the swim to see Geert, who's been manning the rods even this afternoon. He hasn't caught anything at all either, but I wanted to just go on to a section about location, because Geert knows a lot about this lake, a lot more than I do, and I want to know exactly why we're in those swims, so I'll hand over to Geert now.
Well, now I wanted to talk a bit about this choice of swim. The reason that we chose to fish this swim is that we've got a natural reserve in front of us with a shallower area to the left. It's a really snaggy area where the fish tend to hang out a lot. And we've got a shallower bay to our right, which is also a holding area. So the idea is that certainly this time of year, just before spawning, because the fish haven't spawned yet, the fish tend to venture a lot between those two holdings. And the idea is to fish the marginal shelf near the natural reserve to intercept the fish that are moving from one area to another one. We saw this morning, shortly after having caught one fish each, that several fish were displaying themselves. So we saw a couple showing clearly, which proves that the choice of swim isn't too bad. Hopefully, well, we can continue and catch another one tonight. But we'll see.
Well, that's the final rod out for the evening. We're going into sort of 7, 8 o'clock now. I think it's about 8ish. Both Geert and I have got all 3 rods out now on the same marks as last night. And hopefully it's going to bring some success. It's pretty moody actually. It looks like there's a big storm coming. The rain's pattering on the surface as we speak, and it's extremely mild. Conditions are pretty good. Could do with a bit more wind, but can't have it all. So we're going to sit back with a Jupiler and enjoy the evening, and hopefully the night will bring a bit of success.
So right now I would love to tell you a bit about the bait that I'm using for this trip and what kind of tweaks that I make to improve the bait or to make it even better than it is. Well, to start off with, previous to this session, a couple of times I went pre-baiting. The bait that I've been using for that is just the Pacific tuna, 15 and 18 millimeter boilies straight out of the bag. That's it. Now for fishing, I've done some things a bit different, meaning that for the silty areas, because the deeper areas in this lake are really silty and the silt stinks, so to prevent the penetrant odor of the silt to enter the bait, I've done something, well, special. It's easy to do, but it helps out a big time. So basically what I did was take in a plastic bag, put in a couple of boilies. So boilies straight out of the freezer or straight out of the bag. Just chuck them in the plastic bag. And I've added equal amounts of hemp oil and pure salmon oil. Just pour them in the bag. Close the bag. Just move the bait around so the liquid can soak in really well. Then I just leave it to soak. Doesn't matter how long, but the longer you soak, the more the liquid soaks in, the better it is, and the longer the effectiveness is. So that's part of the freebies. As a hook baits, I've got some hook baits that are soaked on long term. Those are Pacific tuna wafters, 18 millimeters. I took them straight out of the tub, put a couple in another tub. The liquids in here are also the hemp oil, pure salmon oil, but I've also added a little bit of Amino Blend 365. This has been soaking for weeks. It doesn't really affect the abilities of the bait to waft. It might make them a bit denser, but at least there's a liquid in the bait. It is thoroughly soaked. So when fishing in silt, the silt won't, or the odor of the silt won't affect the hook bait. So that's it for now. We'll see whether we can catch on it, and we'll keep you updated.
Well, it's day 3 and there's not a lot to report, unfortunately. I've been very busy, but no fish. I've been surface fishing, stalking, trying to catch them off the bottom. It's been a really hard session. These Belgian fish, they're pretty hard to catch, and since our action yesterday morning, it's been pretty quiet. One thing though, I have found them on, we've got sort of 2 lakes on the complex here, and there's a lake next door with some absolute whackers in, and that's where I've been trying to catch them off the surface and in the edge. Each morning we've been feeding in the edge, and the fish have actually come in and fed. This morning we got over there, they had their heads down. I think I was probably an hour too late. I got up a bit later this morning because we've been pestered with mozzies all night and hadn't had much sleep, so pretty bad angling really. I wasn't up early enough, and I missed the boat. So nothing's happening on this lake. We're going to pack up, we're going to go over to the other place where we saw them this morning, and the plan is to get the rods out tonight and hopefully get in the swim, get the rigs in position, some bait there before they turn up tomorrow morning. So hopefully the plan is that they return tomorrow morning just like they have the last 2 days and snare one before they know we're even there. So fingers crossed. I'm going to pack down now. Geert's pretty much packed up, and we're going to have a little wander up the top and chill out for the rest of the afternoon. I might have a little go on the surface, but the plan is for tomorrow. So fingers crossed. Well, what a difference. About 2 hours ago, it was blisteringly hot. We were getting sunburn, it was flat calm, and a front's come in. It looks like it's getting really stormy now. There's a big wind hacking from left to right. And we've obviously moved over to the other lake, which is actually notoriously harder than the one we were on. And we moved over here. I'm in a swim up there where I've popped a couple of rods in the edge. Geert's two swims down and got his rods out pretty quickly onto a nice shallow bar. All the fish were cruising around when it was flat calm, and now it's got stormy. We can't see them obviously, but he's decided to put his rods on a real shallow bar, and about 5 minutes ago it ripped off, and he's got a lovely mirror in the net, so it was well worth the move. I'm over the moon for him, and things are looking really good because we've been here an hour and we've got one. So let's have a look at it now.
Well, just the proof of how soon conditions can change. Move of swims, change of weather, we were on the fish, and within an hour and a half, 2 hours, first fish on the bank. Fish in mint condition, nicely colored and pretty fat, so they still have to spawn. Well, I'm gonna quickly slip that one back and hope for another one. We'll see. So little fella, we're gonna put you back and you can send your family over. We would love to meet them here. Yay!
Well, look at that. A true Belgian mirror. I am over the moon because I've worked my whatsits off to try and catch one of these, to be honest, and it's all come good on the final morning of our trip. I am over the moon. Absolutely jet black. Fought really, really hard, and that's going to be a lovely memory. I've got to thank Geert because he's helped me so much on this trip, knows the lake so well, and I owe a lot of that to him. So yeah, I'm going to take that in. I'm really, really pleased.
I found it really enjoyable. It was quite an eye-opener to see how my fellow anglers reacted on certain situations. It's always good to pick each other's mind and well, learn from each other. So that was really enjoyable. Although it has been difficult, but we managed to adapt to changing situations, which in the end turned out catching a couple of fish each, and well, I'm not disappointed, not at all. So I've got a distinct feeling that this will be continued sooner or later.
I found the session unbelievably enjoyable. There were several things. I couldn't pinpoint one factor in the session that made it enjoyable in particular. It's a culmination of things, fishing with a new guy, one of the top guys in Belgium, Geert. I've learnt so much from him. This guy just oozes confidence in everything that he does. There's no ifs or buts. He knows what to do and when to do it, which has been fantastic. The other most enjoyable part is got to be catching an incredible mirror on the final few hours of the trip, as we're in now. And it was a belting fish, jet black, a true Belgian warrior. So that's got to be the most enjoyable part. And the food. Geert's hospitality has been unbelievable. So yeah, I've made a very good friend here, and I think we'll be making this an annual trip.
Well, why do I think that things have been so tricky? Quite simply because the fish haven't spawned yet. They're really close to spawning. The weather hasn't been stable. It's been for almost 2 weeks now, very hot during the day, heavy thunderstorms at night. Well, it clearly shows that the fish aren't, well, they're close to spawning, but they're not really decisive what to do yet or when to do it. So they're not really in a feeding mood, and I think everything would have been different if either they had spawned or it was a couple of weeks prior to spawning. But then again, you can't pick that, can you?
The trickiest part of the session has got to be Belgian carp on the surface. They are some of the trickiest carp I've ever fished for on the surface. I've been absolutely determined. Every day I've been on the lake trying my hardest to outwit them on the surface. They'll take 1, 2, maybe 3 floaters and then just go. And they just seem very unwilling to take floaters, even though they look like they're there for the hammering. I've tried so hard, and I've got to say that without blowing my own trumpet, surface fishing is probably one of my big strengths in the UK, and the Belgian carp just won't touch it. I think partly of it's because they are grouped up. I think they're going to spawn in the next few days, which has made the fishing tricky. So maybe once they've spawned, they would be more willing to take floaters. But that has been the trickiest part for me, and it's a failure for me on the surface, but I think I made up for it.
One of the more important things was that we made sure that we were on the fish, because when I showed you earlier a certain holding area and we found fish straight away, it became clear that, well, you couldn't catch them off the top or stalking, but with that amount of fish in front of us, well, there's always one fish that eventually will stick his head down. I changed tactics in the way that instead of using just a single bottom bait, I used a snowman setup with a really bright fluoro pop-up. Just the idea behind it is that, well, they might take it just on a visual basis.
The way we tailored our tactics to catch the carp, first of all, was to move. I'm sure Geert will agree that moving on to the fish was the main thing. On the other lake, we felt like we weren't anywhere near them. We didn't see anything, there were no shows, there was nothing to move on. So we've moved on what's notoriously the trickier lake of the two, and we found them. You know, there were fish cruising on the surface. They weren't necessarily feeding, but at least we knew that we were near some carp, and all we needed was 1 or 2 to dip down to give us the chance. Tailoring our tactics wise, we both banged our heads together and both thought that the shallower water was a better option. Luckily, Geert knew where there was a real shallow bar at sort of 80 yards range. It was like sort of between 2 and 2.5 metres. So we wanted to be in shallower water. That's definitely helped get us the bite. And we've also used a bright hook bait. They're not feeding much at the moment, so we just wanted that visual hook bait for it to stand out on the bottom and hopefully catch their attention, and that's what's happened. I think maybe if we hadn't moved, we could be looking at a 2-day blank. You know, we caught the first day, but we blanked the last 2 days if we hadn't moved. And I think that's been the key between success and failure, really, and it's been a success.